years. These images are completely wrong. They're the basis of our first drug laws. The idea of the cocaine-crazed Negro who could supposedly withstand a .22 caliber bullet and keep on coming. But that's not right. We know that. And in 1937, marijuana became illegal because it was tied to Latino migrant workers coming across the border. This image was as wrong then as it is today. Woo! A decade into the 21st century, how much has changed? Whites, blacks, and Latinos use drugs at the same rates. But when we look to who fills our jails and prisons, it isn't people like me. One might imagine that in my home state of Illinois, the land of Lincoln, that disproportionate incarceration would not be a problem. But according to the latest data, Illinois ranks first in the nation for the disproportionate incarceration of African Americans for drug offenses. First in the nation! African Americans make up just 15% of the population. It's a sobering dissimilarity. Illinois ranks second in the nation behind Tennessee for the racial disproportionality of incarcerating drug possession offenders. For every one white person admitted to prison in Illinois for drug possession, more than 6 African Americans join them behind bars. In Cook County, the disparity is even worse. As I stated earlier, the images of threatening Black and Latino men and their drugs remain ever present. But we have the power to erase that image. With your knowledge, with your help, we can end the war on Black and brown people. With this rally and with the work ahead that we will do together, we will hold forums at Roosevelt University. We will find solutions to this problem. We will raise the political will to shatter this image, to change that picture, to ensure that justice is equitable and fair in Illinois, in our land of Lincoln. Woo! What do we want? And when do we want it? And without further ado, I would like to introduce Reverend Alexander Sharp, Executive Director of Protestants for the Common Good.
9 years ago, Barack Obama stood not very far from where we are today. He was our senator running for president, and he opposed the war in Iraq. I'm not against all wars, he said, but I'm against stupid wars. Barack Obama is now president. He's proven he can wind down a war in Iraq. He will soon begin to wind down a war in Afghanistan. Isn't it time for him to start ending a war in the United States? Woo! We have spent over $1 trillion on the war on drugs. But this war has not ended the supply of drugs in this country. This war has not stopped farmers in Bolivia and Colombia and Peru from growing drugs. Has this war ended drugs in your neighborhoods?
No! Hell no.
What this war has done is send thousands, millions of people to prison. We have more people in prison than any other country in the world. More than Russia, more than China. We have become a prisoner nation. And look who we put in prison, mostly people of color. You don't see many white people in Cook County Jail. If you get stopped for drugs in a white neighborhood, somebody counsels you, somebody talks to you, somebody says don't do that again. But on the south and the west sides of Chicago, we sweep people off the streets. We bring them downtown. We put them in jail, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for years. We know that drugs aren't good. We know that drugs can hurt us. If people are hurting themselves, a kind, compassionate God wants us to help them. If people are on the wrong path, a kind, compassionate God wants us to show them the way. But this war keeps people from getting the help they need. It spends most of the money that should help people on other things. The sad thing about the war on drugs is that most people know that it has failed. They just don't have the courage to say so. And that is why we are so grateful to have Cook County Board President Toni Prenkwinkle with us here today. She is willing to speak the truth, a leader with courage. As for this war on drugs, and be with me now, 40 years is enough. 40 years is enough. 40 years is enough. President Obama has showed us that he knows how to stop wars that are stupid wars, that are wrong wars. I call on him to start ending this war now.
Yeah.
All right. My name is L.C. Redmond for the South Austin Coalition. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. Those signs that says that the war on drugs is the new Jim Crow says it all right there. But as Reverend Sharp has said, we want to introduce all these powerful speakers. We're going to talk about how this war on drugs has devastated lives and wasted resources and created this new Jim Crow system. I want to introduce you now to the president of the county board, Miss Toni Prenkwinkle.
Thank you. I want to thank Roosevelt University and the Drug Policy Alliance for organizing this event. We all know that the war on drugs has failed to end drug use. Instead, it's resulted in the incarceration of millions of people around the country and 100,000 here in Cook County on an annual basis. Drugs and the failed war on drugs have devastated lives, families, and communities. For too long, we've treated drug use as a criminal justice issue rather than a public health issue, which is what it is. As you've heard, African Americans in Cook County are 8 times more likely to go to prison for low-level drug offenses than those of other groups. 8 times. Some of these same people cycle through our jails over and over again with a recidivism rate of 50%. At any given time, 8,500 people are in the Cook County Jail for which we're responsible. Nearly 70% of them are there for non-violent offenses, many of them for drug possession charges. And as you read in the Sun-Times earlier this week, 83% of the people who enter our jail have illicit drugs in their system. Yet only 1,400 of these 8,500, or 16% of the jail population, are in drug treatment programs. My priority is to reduce the jail population and address this problem directly. Rather than continue this cycle of arrest and detention and imprisonment, we must shift our focus to prevention and intervention. We must expand drug treatment programs so that people can get well, rather than cycling them through the criminal justice system at a tremendous social and economic cost to all of us. The cost is too great to continue fighting this war on drugs with so little success. Rather than investing in people, in detaining people in the Cook County Jail at almost $150 a day, that's $45,000 to $50,000 a year is what it costs us to keep somebody in jail. We need to invest in treatment, education, and job skills training. That's the only way in which we're going to reduce crime and stabilize our communities. Thank you very much.
All right, another round of applause for Toni Prenkwinkle. Come on. speaker doesn't really need any sort of introductions at all. He's always been on the right side of the fight and always been a true fighter for social justice. I am talking about none other than Reverend Pfleger.
Good afternoon. Here's what we know. The war of drugs has been unequal, unjust, and has failed. Since the war of drugs began, we've seen a rise of drug cartels, a rise in crime, and a rise in addiction. We've seen disproportionate arrests of African Americans, as been noted earlier, 8 times more in Cook County than whites. We've seen a continued injustice in sentencing between crack and cocaine. We've seen a continued unjust and a downright evil system that's committed funding 3 times more to locking somebody up than to giving them a college education in Illinois. We've seen a whole population of people who have been sent to prison and have kept out of public housing, kept out of work, and been on a fast track to go back to jail in this system. All this while we fail to support prevention, while we don't have treatment on demand, so that if somebody wants to get help getting off drugs, they have to go on a waiting list and told to wait until we can take care of them. All the while we are incarcerating folks. And let me tell you something, the drug cartels are not just in Mexico. The drug cartels are in Chicago, on LaSalle Street, on Clark Street, people in 3-piece suits that don't go to jail, but hid the drugs in this country. I don't understand. If we can find Saddam Hussein in a hole, and we can find Osama bin Laden across the ocean in a compound, why can't we get planes and ships bringing drugs into America? We can arrest the street, but we won't arrest those bringing them into Chicago. There's not a war on drugs. There's a war on the poor, and there's a war on people of color. And now we're trying to stabilize by building more prisons to stabilize rural America on the backs of poor people and black, white, and brown. For 40 years, the war on drugs has destroyed lives, wasted resources, and criminalized masses of individuals and caused them to face legal discrimination for the rest of their lives. There was a phrase a few years ago that said, just say no. Well, I'm here today to say, let's just say no to the drug war. Let's just say no to the drug war and the unequal treatment of people in America. Thank you.
One more time for Reverend Michael Pfleger. Reverend Pfleger is absolutely right. This war is a war against the poor, and it's a war against people of color. All right, we must stand together to fight against this war that has increased the amount of incarceration in this country. We have another guest who's going to come to you now and really talk about that, and that is Miss Pam Rodriguez from TASC.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
You're carrying the signs that say 8 African American men for every 1 white man in prison related to the drug war. Are you surprised by that? No, nobody's surprised, right? 60% of drug arrests in Cook County are dropped. Did you know that? But what happens? People build criminal histories as a result of those arrests. And so we're building arrests and criminal histories that make it impossible for what? Employment, right?
Right.
So for all of the churn in the justice system, we're creating criminal histories with our folks who can't then get jobs, can't get housing, can't get education. Did you know that rates of substance abuse in the African American and Latino communities are the same as they are in the white community?
Yeah.
They're the same rates of drug abuse in all communities. Yet African Americans, based on a study that TASC has done in support of a commission dedicated to this issue, we found out that African Americans are less likely to take advantage of community-based treatment alternatives. The treatment programs aren't in communities. They don't know how to get into them. You heard references to waiting lists. People are not taking advantage of the public health approach to addiction. We need to educate folks about that as an alternative and not just about incarceration and the criminal justice system as a strategy. You heard a study probably in the last couple of days. 83% of arrestees in Cook County test positive for drug use. Are you surprised? No. How many of you know a 15 to 30-year-old African American or Latino male? How many of you know? Anybody know? Okay. I have 2 sons who fit in that category, right? They are far more likely to be stopped and searched because they are Latino or African American than are their white counterparts. It doesn't have to be this way. We made these laws. We made these rules. Our parents made them. Our neighbors made them. We can change them.
Woo!
Right? We can change them.
Yeah!
The legislators work for us.
That's right.
Toni Preckwinkle was just here. We elected her. She's going to carry out our agenda, what we want, right?
Yeah!
There are more people who can do that. You have to speak up and let people know that that's what you want. We can change these laws and we can change these practices. We can pay for schools and we can pay for treatment, or we pay for prisons. And it's up to us to make that decision.
Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam Rodriguez. And she's absolutely right. All right, we need treatment. We need opportunities. We do not need prisons. I want to introduce another brother who's out there in the community on a daily basis, working with young people to keep them out of prison. This is Tio Hardiman from Ceasefire.
Okay, how's everybody doing today?
Great!
Okay, I just want to say on behalf of Ceasefire, I'm glad to be here, but at the same time, the main goal today is to educate the public. You know, the drug war is not working. It's time to invest in people and invest in treatment so we can help repair and restore lives, all right? A perfect example of how the treatment works, look at Morton Downey Jr. right now. He had a drug problem, right? And now he's playing Iron Man. That shows you how you can turn your life around. But just let me put a few more numbers out there for you. But that's the truth there. 1,663 people, 582 people arrested in 2009 for non-violent drug charges, all right? Those guys are in these penitentiaries locked down 23 hours a day. Imagine being locked in your bathroom for 23 hours a day. Can you stand that? Can you stand the pressure? So we need to put pressure so they can bring an end to the drug war. All right? 2 million people, over 2,400,000 people are locked up in America across the United States. The prison population has quadrupled throughout the last 10 years in the United States. That's not right. Am I right or wrong?